is multiple. But one thing we understand, the seriousness of a life in exile physically from Yahweh, from our homeland, Israel, and spiritually from Yahweh, requires a lot of thinking, requires a lot of meditation, requires a lot of introspection. Meaning a lot of our brethren and a lot of Israel that should be entering the coming Olam Haba, or the age to come, are not going to be entering the Olam Haba. They're not going to be entering the age to come. Why? Because of rebellion and willful disobedience. That's why. So that it is a time to say, wait a second, that the 8th day points to something greater than the 7 days of Sukkot. But it should be a time for us, thinking of the kingdom coming, the Olam Haba coming, a time to rejoice, a time to have eternal life, a time to have bliss, a time to actually see the Lamb and be in the New Yerushalayim. Come on. And yet Yahweh slows us down. And Yahweh says, no. He says, this is a time to be sober. This is a time to be introspective. This is a time to think about things. What is Yahweh getting at? I believe he separates Shmini Atzeret from the Chag, never allowing it to be called the Chag, never allowing us to go in the Sukkah, keeping us outside of the Sukkah, because in the Chag, there's still a realization that there's an exile upon us.
Yeah, exile.
And it is our exile from Yisrael, from the land, from Yerushalayim, and it is our brothers and sisters who think they're all right, but they don't have a clue that they're really miserable, poor, blind, and naked.
Come on. Hello. Baruch Hashem Yahweh.
So the 8th day is symbolic of the time when we will drink from the Shekhinah rather than have to experience it through community living. Through the 7 days of Sukkot, we realize we need each other. Through the 8th day, we ought to come to a sober realization that at some point, we're going to have to give up everything on this earth to inherit the Olam Haba.
Amen. That's right. That's dead on.
And that is very sobering. That is something very serious to consider. Is it worth it? Is it worth the cost? Is it worth being a Talmid of Yeshua? Is it worth forsaking all and being his Talmid? Is it? Is it worth it? So, in other words, in order to inherit the 8th day, when we won't experience the Shekhinah through a shared sense of community, which is why we shower together. Now, please don't read into this, all right? Not together, darling, separately, but in the same edifice. We shower together, we take our meals together, we break bread together, we pray together, we make tefillah together, we sing, we make tehilot together. And next year, Yahweh willing, gives us the health, Yitzhak Yahweh, we will have the outdoors, and we will experience the community Shekhinah for 7 days.
Amen.
But after that, we cannot go back in the Sukkah on the 8th day, because Yahweh does not allow us to go back in the Sukkah on the 8th day. He wants us to stop and meditate on, are we going to go all the way? That's why Yeshua said, he that endures to the end, he shall be delivered. You got to stop and say, okay, it's nice to bang the drum, and it's nice to listen to Chaz and Brian's music, and it's nice to hug everybody in shul.
7 days. 7 days.
But if I don't endure to the end, I'm not going to inherit the 8th day.
Yeah, that's right.
In the 8th day, I am not going to experience Yahweh through shared values of community. I will behold him face to face.
That's right.
And that is why on Shmini Atzeret, Yeshua stood up and said, okay, do you like the Beit HaMikdash? Do you like the temple ceremony? Did you like the libation ceremony of the outpouring of the water on Hoshana Rabbah? Great. Now, take your eyes off of the community. Take your eyes off of the 2 houses. Take your eyes off of what it means to be part of Israel. Take your eyes off of what it means to be part of the Commonwealth. Take your eyes off of the nice shofar that you bought for $200 that you've been waiting for 6 months to blow so you can impress everybody. Now put your eyes on me, because you're about to meet me. O Israel, prepare to meet thy Eloha. O Israel, prepare to meet thy Eloha.
That great.
Prepare. Because the coming of the eighth day means you're going to one day be, we are right now very close to meet Eloha.
Yes.
Amen.
Prepare to meet thy Eloha.
Oh, hallelujah.
So it's connected, but it's not. It's part of Sukkot, but it's really not. It's part of the community, but it's really not. So that Chag Sukkot belongs to the community, but Shemini Atzeret belongs to the individual.
Amen.
Ooh.
Oh. Come on.
But if that's true, Rabbi, why does Yahweh say call a Mikra Kodesh? Because he wants you to take a look around and realize that not everyone who calls me master will enter the kingdom of Yahweh.
Right.
That among the wheat there are tares, and only those who endure to the end will drink and have rivers coming from his innermost being. So it's a sober time. It's a time of introspection. It's a time of deep earnest. It's not a Mikra Kodesh to experience the shared community of the Shekhinah. It's a time to realize that in a very not too distant future, when Yeshua returns
Hallelujah.
and he separates the wheat from the chaff, Rabbi Moshe won't be there.
That's right. Only the mind.
Robinson Rivka won't be there.
Mind kind.
Tehillah and Beltrami won't be there to do deliverance. It's just going to be you and Yeshua, darling. Now's the time to get your deliverance.
Yes.
Now's the time to shower together. Chill out. No, just don't read into that.
Yahweh.
Now's the time to eat your meals together. Now's the time to pray together.
Yes.
Now's the time to show off your shofar.
But you know.
Now's the time to show off your brand new polished silver trumpet.
Yes.
Now's the time to show off to everybody that you have a nice new conference room upstairs. Now's the time. But the eighth day that's a sobering time. You know why? Because that's the day of the great separation. It's not the day of the great rapture. It's the day of the great separation, where those who think they're going up in a spaceship ain't going nowhere. Number one. Number two, are not going to be part of the Kiddushim when the Kiddushim go marching in. Why? Because they heard the word, but like a foolish man, they did not perform and obey and do and follow through on the word.
Yes.
So the eighth day is a time. Did you smile for 7 days? Did you experience my Shekhinah through shared community for 7 days? Good. But realize that at the end of the age, you're going to be on your own.
Okay.
And that's why he says, yeah, go ahead. Get together with the folks you've been hanging out with for 7 days. Go ahead. But get together with a different framework. It's not really Sukkot. You are now in the Atid Lavo or the Olam Haba. You have entered into the age to come. And look around. Things are going to be different. For those who are not walking the walk, as we heard today in the Word, hey, the New Yerushalayim may just be a nice place on a tourist pamphlet. Hello? Hello? Tourist pamphlet. And that's why it's a sobering time. It's a time when Yeshua separates the wheat from the chaff. That was a very interesting word today.
Very.
I mean, other than the fact that he stole all of our joy. Maybe it was ordained that way. Because today, maybe it was ordained that way.
Yeah.
That's right.
Because Yahweh's taking us out of the joy of the lulav and the etrog and the kosher Hebrew national salami and all y'all pigging out at the table. I saw, can Israelites pig out? Yes, trust me. I saw it this year.
Yeah. And some in secret.
Pigging out in secret? Ted, don't talk about yourself. Please. Take it easy on yourself. Chopped liver. Man, I should have seen you guys. But that's cool. But today, the word of Yahweh is saying, hey, you know, how are we treating each other? How are we treating our husbands? How are we treating our... It doesn't just go for the wives. It goes for... Wives can abuse their husbands too, you know that. It goes both ways. So the point is that was a very interesting word. It was a word of rebuke and correction, but it kind of goes with the day. Now, those who are engaging in Shmini Atzeret realize that they're going to have to learn how to do their own drinking and be dependent on the Ruach HaKodesh themselves, because the time of rebuke will be over. The reason this day is separate from Sukkot Because our joy does not guarantee that we are going to enter the kingdom of heaven. Our position and our righteousness in Yeshua as his Talmid is what guarantees that we enter the kingdom of heaven. So that's why it's separate from the 7 days of Sukkot. Yahweh says for the 7 days, just go ahead and enjoy everything. The sights, the sound, the smell, everything associated with Sukkot, go ahead and enjoy. But on the 8th day, Yahweh goes, now get together, have a Mikra Kodesh, but remember one thing. The 8th day points to something completely different than the 7 days. The 7 days pointed to the time of the Atid Lavo, or the age to come, where we will be with Yahweh. But the 8th day points to eternity. The 8th day points to a time forever, as in forever, Le'olam Va'ed. And some of us think we're going to be with the Lamb forever. Yahweh said, Yeshua said there may be some who are in the lake of fire forever. So that's why Yahweh says, now, I know who is who. I know who are my sheep. I know who are the goats. And when I return, I will separate the sheep from the goats. Hello? And those on the right, I will say, come, blessed of my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world. Amen? Baruch Hashem Yahweh. I said Baruch Hashem Yahweh.
Amen.
Amen.
Yes.
So the seriousness of this day reminds us that there is a life of exile for us that a shared community experience cannot cause us to inherit.
Yeah.
No matter how good our shared community experience was these past 7 days,
Yes.
no matter how many times we met our brothers and sisters under the Sukkah,
Yes.
it can't carry us into the Olam Haba. Only a life of submission and obedience and washing in the blood of Yeshua and regeneration by the word of Yahweh can lead us to that day in the Olam Haba, signified and typified and symbolized by the 8th day, somebody.
Amen.
That's what I'm talking about.
That's what the 8th day is all about.
Yeah.
Come on.
It's a life of regeneration, renewal, a coming of the kingdom of Yahweh.
Amen.
And it's a sobering thought.
Yeah.
And it's a sobering thought to be taken away. And the church world's praying to be taken away.
Yeah.
It's a sobering thought that, wait, we don't want to be taken away. We want to be left behind so that when this earth is regenerated and recreated, we can enter the Olam Haba.
Amen.
So Yahweh goes, did you have a good time? Good. I designed it for you to have a good time. Did you enjoy community living? Yes. Did you enjoy the camaraderie and the intimacy of community? Yes. But there's a greater intimacy. So that this day
If you don't enjoy that
can be a check.
for 7 days,
It can be a time to take stock of yourself and say, wait a second, am I really ready to enter the Olam Haba? That's what we just heard today. Am I really ready to enter the Olam Haba? If I am, well, I'll just continue in Simcha. If I'm not, well, it's a pretty sober, serious time of introspection, is it not?
yeah.
So that the 8th day symbolizes an exile or a life of exile without ever drinking personally from Yeshua and having the Mayim Chaim coming out of the belly.
That's right.
In other words, you taste it, but you only can taste it through shared community. When you're having a good time in community, you're touching the Shekhinah, the divine presence.
Oh, hallelujah.
When you don't feel good and your emotions are betraying you, or you feel down, or you feel rejected, or you feel neglected, or you feel like you're a second-class citizen, or you feel like you're outcast, then the joy of Yahweh is not your strength. So in other words, that is a temporary joy, simcha. But Yahweh says, before you inherit the greater simcha of the 8th day, you got to take stock to make sure that you're going to be there. And Yeshua said, I speak of the Ruach HaKodesh, amen?
Amen.
Which was not yet poured out.
That's right.
Hello?
Come on.
Now, it was poured out when Yeshua rose from the dead. It was poured out. But the outpouring of the cloud will not be poured out to the end of the age. So the 7 days remind us that in this age, we need each other, even though we have the Ruach HaKodesh.
That's right.
Correct?
That's right.
We need each other.
Amen.
But there's another day coming, Shmini Atzeret, the 8th day, which speaks of the Olam Haba, when we're going to need nothing, when we're going to be able to take nothing, when all we're going to have is Yeshua and Him, and we're going to be drinking from the Ruach HaKodesh directly through Yeshua,
Come on. Baruch Hashem Yahweh.
and not through shared community.
Right.
Hallelujah.
That's right.
And that's why it's not part of Chag Sukkot.
Hallelujah.
Not at the hog.
And that's why Yahweh says, it ain't a Chag.
That's right.
It ain't a Chag.
Mm.
Are you with me?
Yes.
Amen.
Why?
Sobering.
For the reasons I just mentioned. Yahweh wants to sober us with the realization that exile, without the coming cloud of glory, or the fullness of the Shekhinah, is really a life of exile. In other words, you can experience Sukkot, but still be in exile. Sukkot, a lot of people, they get bummed out in the natural, don't they?
Yeah.
They're alone, they're back in the same room,
Long time before the next hog.
they're back in the same house, they're back in the same condition,
Yes.
they're back in the same desperation, they're back in the same situation,
Yeah.
they're back at with the same employer.
Where's the
Nothing's
Ruach?
changed. The 7 days of community that was supposed to lift us up, now we're right back in the rat race. Not that we're rats, but we feel like we're right back in the rat race. Nothing's really changed.
No joy.
So we realize that a life of exile is not a life at all. We realize that there's got to be something more than this, don't we? We have the Ruach HaKodesh and we still get depressed. We have the Ruach HaKodesh and we still complain. We have the Ruach HaKodesh and we still falsely accuse. We have the Ruach HaKodesh and we still lay charge.
That's
We
right.
have the Ruach HaKodesh and we still mistreat our wives.
Yeah.
We have the Ruach HaKodesh and we still mistreat our husbands.
That's right.
We have the Ruach HaKodesh and we still slander the rabbi every week.
Yeah.
Getting sick of it, matter of fact. we got the Ruach HaKodesh. And we know that this is a joke. We know that there's a cloud coming, and the question is, what's that cloud all about? We have a down payment, a deposit of the Ruach HaKodesh. But Yeshua said, come to me, not to community, not to the sukkah, because I want to be your sukkah. And as we read today, in the New Yerushalayim, there is no sukkah, for the Lamb is the sukkah thereof.
Come on.
That's what the 8th day is all about.
Right.
It says the party's over for some, but not for others.
Hallelujah.
That's right. Some are in the sukkah.
Amen.
Go ahead and get together, sing the same songs, do the same thing, go through the same motions, but realize it's going to be a higher level of party for some, but for some, it's going to be a sober, a rude awakening.
That's right.
I know I'm talking to somebody today.
Better
Yes,
listen.
yes, yes.
Baruch Hashem Yahweh.
Hashem Yahweh.
In other words, Yeshua said, now that there's an Olam Haba coming where you're going to have to come to me. On Sukkot we celebrate, listen, Simchat Bet HaShe'uvah. Write it down. On Sukkot we celebrate Simchat Bet HaShe'uvah, or the return of the nations, or the going up of the nations to Yerushalayim. The masses come. Those who fear Yahweh come. They come to the Kotel HaMaravi. And they remember and they pray and they seek Yahweh for the coming of Mashiach and the rebuilding of the Beit HaMikdash. But this going up of the nations to Yerushalayim is not a nostalgic event, something that used to happen, but rather it is a preparation for the future. Hello? For the Sukkot, we have Simcha. For the Sukkot, we go to Yerushalayim. Why? Because we know that He is renewing our days as of old. Colossians 2:16, that the Moadim are indicators of things to come. They are shadows of things
Yes.
to come.
Me.
Really? Well, wait a second. If the 7 days of Sukkot, the Chag Sukkot, are shadows of things to come, then the 8th day of
It's also
not Sukkot, but the 8th day of Shmini Atzeret also is a shadow of something to come. Something separate from
the 7th.
the 7 days.
Yeah,
A separate time of joy and experiencing Yahweh.
7,000 years.
So according to our sages, listen, there are 2 types of obligations during Sukkot. First, there is the general mitzvah, write this down, the general mitzvah of rejoicing on the Chag. It's a general rejoicing. Everybody gets to do it. Everybody who wants to. All segments of society. Eat anywhere they want to. In Yerushalayim, and today in the community. But the second type of simcha is a simcha in the temple in the ancient days, where the righteous ones, the sages, and the Kohanim, only they were allowed to sing, to dance, and to make merry. Let's go through this again. In the ancient temple, there were 2 kinds of rejoicing during Sukkot and then later Shmini Atzeret. One was for the general public, who could eat and drink anywhere in Yerushalayim, anytime during the 7 days of Sukkot. And then there was those who were only allowed to rejoice and to dance and to have a Chag in the temple. And who were they? The righteous, the sages, the tzaddikim, those who were known to have a walk of being yashar before Yahweh. So even during the Chag, in ancient times, there were 2 types of simcha. Write it down. 2 types of simcha. There was the general simcha, and then there was the priestly simcha. Included with the priestly simcha was all the tzaddikim, all the Leviim who were righteous, all the zechenim who were walking in the ways of Torah. So even during the Sukkot, there was a general simcha and a what? Specific simcha. Make sense? Baruch Hashem Yahweh. That simcha also carried over into Shmini Atzeret. We'll talk about that in a little while. So the second type of simcha was only allowed inside the temple courts. But guess what? Guess what? Today there's no temple, is there? So this second rejoicing, this priestly rejoicing, must take place amongst sobriety and a sense of gravity, exile. So that Shmini Atzeret are for the righteous. Shmini Atzeret is for the Kohanim. Shmini Atzeret is for the sanctified. Shmini Atzeret is for the tzaddikim. Shmini Atzeret is not for those who are looking to eat lunch somewhere in Jerusalem. To touch Yahweh only through shared community. If Yafa doesn't show up, if Rivka doesn't show up, if Brian doesn't show up, I'm bummed out. Because the only way I ever get to touch Yahweh is to see my friends. Hello? Or the community's getting smaller, or the community's getting larger. And I'm bummed out. I'm bummed in. One day I'm bummed in. One day I'm bummed out. One day I'm bumped up. One day I'm full of bumps that goose and goose that bump. Pretty soon you're feeling not like a child of Israel, but you're feeling like a goose. So what's the point? The point is, even in ancient times, there was simcha, and there was a special simcha for during Sukkot for the tzaddikim. So the point of Shmini Atzeret, Yahweh said, he's saying Shmini Atzeret is for the righteous. Gilead 1:6, we are all kings and we are all priests, Kohanim. So that Shmini Atzeret should be a time that we look forward to the day when we will drink directly from the Ruach HaKodesh and the experience that we share with Yeshua and not only limited with each other. Does this make sense?
Amen.
I said, does this make sense?
Hallelujah.
Yes.
Are you getting this?
Amen.
Amen. Yes?
Yes.
Amen.
Tov. Now that was true in those days. It also is written that in the second temple, the Shekhinah had departed. Why? What was missing from the second temple?
No ark.
Tablets of stone, the tablets of the testimony, the ark of the testimony, Aaron's rod that budded, the pot of manna. All of Yisrael and the 12 tribes were no longer all together in the land. So our sages tell us that the second temple did not house the Shekhinah of Yahweh. That the cloud, write it down, the Shekhinah or the cloud had departed. What does a cloud consist of? What are the components of a cloud?
Water.
Water in the form of what?
Vapor.
Vapor, steam, right? A steamed, hello? Vapor, steam. So the Shekhinah is synonymous with the inner water bubbling up inside of you into a vapor, into the Shekhinah of Yahweh, or the divine manifest presence of Yahweh. So Yeshua is saying, when he says, come to me to drink, it's not so you can drink and go home and put up your feet on a footstool saying, I'm drunk in the Ruach.
What comes out?
It's so that it can come out of you, through you, and that through you, Yahweh can manifest his Shekhinah,
Amen. Come on.
so that it'll come through you, but it won't remain in liquid form. It'll remain, that liquid will go into a vaporous form and form a cloud.
It rise up.
Again, this message, the return of the cloud.
Come on.
Hallelujah.
The return of the cloud. Baruch Hashem, Yahweh. So the temple is not standing. The divine presence is no longer in the temple. It was not in the temple 500 years before Yeshua was born. The glory had ichobah, the cloud had departed. And on Shmini Atzeret, Yahshua is saying the cloud is going to come back. Not yet.